Well, here we are again, talking 49ers on what feels like another beautiful day in the Bay. And I want to start by painting a picture of where this team really stands right now. You can look at the skyline, you can look at the Golden Gate, you can dream about Super Bowls and future parades, but none of that matters if the foundation of the offense doesn't get fixed. And right now, the biggest crack in that foundation is wide receiver separation. That's the conversation we have to have, because it impacts everything else. This past season made it painfully obvious. San Francisco finished near the bottom of the league when it came to creating separation at wide receiver. That's not just some nerdy stat you brush aside. That's a massive problem. That means Brock Purdy is throwing into tighter windows. That means drives stall out. That means explosive plays disappear. And that's exactly what we saw. The offense still produced at times because Brock Purdy is that good and Kyle Shanahan can scheme things up. But the margin for error became razor thin. Every throw had to be perfect. Every read had to be on time. And when that happens, eventually, it catches up to you. A huge part of that traces back to Brandon Ayuk not being available. The 49ers paid Brandon Ayuk for a reason. He wasn't just your top separator, he was also a critical piece in the run game because of his blocking. When he was gone, you didn't just lose a receiver. You lost a tone setter. You lost someone who made life easier for Christian McCaffrey. You lost someone who helped spring big runs on the edge. And suddenly, everything became harder. Defenses squeezed the field, dared the 49ers to win outside, and San Francisco struggled to answer consistently. Before we go any further, real quick, if you enjoy these deep dives into the 49ers and you want to stay locked in all offseason, make sure you're subscribed and turn on notifications. We're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you makes a difference. And while you're here, let me ask you this in the comments. Do you think wide receiver is the biggest need for the 49ers this offseason, yes or no? Because, to me, this is the unifying factor behind everything we're about to talk about. You can debate pass rush, you can debate offensive line depth, but when your wide receivers can't separate, the entire offense feels it. San Francisco actually ranked dead last in separation just last year, and this season wasn't much better. That's why the explosive play rate dropped. That's why we saw more contested catches. That's why Brock Purdy didn't always look as comfortable as he did in previous stretches. It's not because he suddenly forgot how to play quarterback. It's because he was being asked to thread needles on a weekly basis. And here's the thing that should both frustrate you and give you hope. This roster already has elite pieces. Brock Purdy is one of the better quarterbacks in the league. Christian McCaffrey is still Christian McCaffrey. George Kittle is George Kittle. Kyle Shanahan is still calling plays. This offense doesn't need a miracle. It doesn't need to be reinvented. It needs competence and consistency at wide receiver. It needs guys who can get open, win at the catch point, and block when the play isn't designed for them. That's why you're hearing names start to circulate. That's why people are talking about splashy possibilities. Fans want answers, and they want them fast. Some of those ideas sound incredible on paper. Some of them are a lot more complicated once you dig into the details. And that brings us to the biggest name floating around right now. The dream scenario that has everyone buzzing, and the reality check that comes with it. So now we get to the part of the conversation that really gets fans fired up, and that's Justin Jefferson. You've probably seen the chatter already. You've probably heard the speculation. When a name like Justin Jefferson comes up, it's only natural to start imagining what that would look like in a Kyle Shanahan offense with Brock Purdy throwing the football. On the surface, it sounds unreal. You're talking about one of the very best wide receivers in the entire NFL. A true game changer who can tilt coverage, demand double teams, and instantly upgrade your passing attack. But let's slow this down for a second and talk about reality, because that's where things get interesting. First off, if the 49ers were ever going to trade for Justin Jefferson, it wouldn't be cheap. We're talking multiple first-round picks, minimum. On top of that, you're taking on a massive contract. Yes, San Francisco technically can afford it. They're no longer paying Brandon Ayuk, and they've got flexibility if they're willing to push money into future years. So purely from a cap perspective, it's possible. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. The bigger question is whether Minnesota would even be willing to move him. And right now, that's far from guaranteed. Trading Jefferson would create a ton of dead money for the Vikings, and they haven't exactly waved the white flag on their future. If something like this ever happened, it's more likely to come during the season, not right now. And even if Minnesota picked up the phone, you still have to ask yourself what the real cost is. Draft picks are the lifeblood of this roster. The 49ers have built their core through smart drafting and development. Giving up multiple firsts isn't just about losing future players. It's about losing cheap talent at a time when you're already paying stars across the roster. That's how windows close faster than people expect. Now let me ask you something, and be honest with yourself here. Would you trade 2 first-round picks for Justin Jefferson? Yes or no? Drop it in the comments, because I'm genuinely curious where you stand on that. Here's where I land. As incredible as Justin Jefferson is, I don't think San Francisco actually needs a top-shelf, A-list superstar to fix this offense. What they need is functionality. They need receivers who can separate consistently, who can catch in traffic when they have to, and who will block in the run game. Brandon Ayuk checked all of those boxes. He wasn't just putting up numbers. He was making the entire offense work better. And that's why his absence was felt everywhere. If you bring in someone like Jefferson, yes, you immediately become more dangerous through the air. But you also change the identity of the offense. You become more pass-heavy. You have to adjust your run concepts. And there's also the fit question. How willing is a superstar receiver to embrace the dirty work in this system? Because in San Francisco, wide receivers don't just run routes. They're expected to block linebackers, seal edges, and spring McCaffrey into the secondary. That stuff matters here. This is why I keep coming back to resource management. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch have always tried to be efficient with their assets. They don't usually chase headlines. They chase fits. They chase value. And while Justin Jefferson would absolutely be a home run on the stat sheet, the ripple effects across the rest of the roster are massive. So before we all get carried away with blockbuster fantasies, it's worth remembering that there are other paths to fixing this problem. Paths that don't involve mortgaging the future. Paths that focus on adding the right kind of player instead of just the biggest name. And that's where the conversation shifts from dreams to practicality. Because there's a wide receiver out there who makes a whole lot of sense for what the 49ers actually need. If Justin Jefferson represents the fantasy scenario, then Romeo Doubs represents the realistic one. And honestly, this is where things start to feel a lot more like how the 49ers actually operate. Doubs isn't going to dominate headlines. He's not going to break the internet. But when you dig into what San Francisco truly needs, his profile starts to make a lot of sense. First off, he's a big-bodied receiver who isn't afraid of contact. That matters. The 49ers have been forced into tight windows all season, and when you're living in that world, you better have guys who can win contested catches. Doubs does exactly that. His contested catch rate is elite, and that's a skill this offense badly lacked when Brandon Ayuk went down. Separation is important, but when separation isn't perfect, you need receivers who can still finish plays. Doubs gives you that. Then there's the blocking. And I know blocking doesn't get fans excited the way touchdowns do, but in this offense, it's non-negotiable. No block, no rock. That's been the standard in San Francisco for years. Doubs has experience in a similar system, and he's shown he's willing to do the dirty work. That's a massive difference between someone who just runs routes and someone who actually fits what Kyle Shanahan is trying to build. Now, layer in the contract situation. Doubs is on track to be an unrestricted free agent. That means you don't have to give up draft picks to acquire him. You're talking about a mid-tier investment that preserves your future while still upgrading the present. That's huge, especially when you consider everything else the 49ers may need to address. And this is where the dominoes start to fall. If Jauan Jennings walks because another team throws big money at him, suddenly you're looking at holes at wide receiver 2 and wide receiver 3. If that happens, you can't just plug in one guy and call it a day. You need a small reset of the room. Adding someone like Doubs helps stabilize things. He gives you a physical presence on the outside, someone Brock Purdy can trust in tight situations, and someone who won't hurt you when the play is designed for Christian McCaffrey instead. So let me throw this one out to you. Would you rather swing big for a superstar like Jefferson, or would you prefer adding someone like Romeo Doubs and keeping your draft picks? Drop your answer in the comments, because when you zoom out, this isn't just about one player. It's about reconstructing the entire receiver rotation. Say Jennings leaves. Say you add Doubs. Now you're pairing him with Ricky Pearsall at the top. Behind them, you're hoping for growth from Jordan Watkins and Jacob Cowing in year 2. You still have DeMarcus Robinson under contract for another season. Suddenly, the room looks a lot deeper, a lot tougher, and a lot more functional than what we saw during stretches this year. And that functionality matters because the ripple effects go everywhere. Better wide receiver blocking helps the run game. Better contested catchability helps Brock Purdy on third down. Even modest improvements in separation can bring explosive plays back into the offense. You don't need perfection, you just need progress. If you're enjoying this breakdown so far and you like talking realistic off-season moves, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow toward that 1,000 subscriber goal, and it lets me know you want more content like this. But here's the other part of this equation. External additions are only half the story. The 49ers are also banking on someone already in the building to take a massive step forward, and his development could end up shaping the entire off-season plan. Ricky Pearsall might be the most important wide receiver on the 49ers right now, and that's not an exaggeration. Before the PCL injury slowed him down, he was quietly putting together one of the most efficient starts by any receiver in the league. Over the first 4 weeks, Pearsall was sitting at 238 yards per route run. That's elite territory. That's top 5 production. That's the kind of efficiency you expect from a true number 1 option, not a rookie still trying to find his footing. Then the injury happened, and if you watched closely, you could see it. He wasn't moving the same way. The burst wasn't quite there. The speed didn't look like his normal speed. He was still contributing, but that explosive element that made him so dangerous early on just wasn't the same. And yet, even through all of that, the 49ers never stopped believing in him. Kyle Shanahan has already made it clear that they view Pearsall as a top-of-the-league type player when he's healthy. That matters because it tells you a lot about how this front office is. Approaching the offseason, they've already invested premium draft capital in Ricky. That means they're almost forced to give him every opportunity to become that guy. This isn't just optimism. This is organizational commitment. If Pearsall comes back fully healthy, San Francisco genuinely believes he can fill that #1 role from an efficiency standpoint. And when you pair that with Brock Purdy's accuracy and Shanahan's play design, you start to see why they may not feel desperate to chase a megastar. Now, that doesn't mean they're standing still. Behind Pearsall, there's real hope for growth. Jordan Watkins is a name to watch closely. He flashed at times and has the physical traits to carve out a meaningful role. Jacob Cowing is heading into year 2, and that's often when receivers make their biggest jump. Demarcus Robinson is still under contract for another season, giving you a veteran presence who understands his role. Add one smart external piece, like Romeo Doubs, to that mix, and suddenly you're looking at a room that actually makes sense. Let me ask you this. Do you truly believe Ricky Pearsall can become a legitimate WR1 for the 49ers? Drop your answer in the comments, because this is the pivot point of the entire offseason. And don't forget what already exists around this group. Christian McCaffrey is still one of the most versatile weapons in football. George Kittle is still a matchup nightmare when healthy. Brock Purdy continues to prove he belongs among the better quarterbacks in the league. The infrastructure is already there. What was missing this season was consistency on the outside. Too many plays died because receivers couldn't separate or finish through contact. Too many runs got blown up because blocks weren't sealed. That's why this isn't just about catching passes. It's about restoring balance. It's about making the run game dangerous again. It's about letting Brock play fast and confident instead of constantly forcing throws into tight coverage. If Pearsall returns to full speed, and if even one or two of these younger guys take a step forward, the offense looks completely different. If you're enjoying this conversation and you're excited to see how this receiver room evolves, make sure you like the video and subscribe. We're building toward 1,000 subscribers, and staying locked in all offseason is the best way to follow every move this team makes. Now, when you put all of this together, you start to see the bigger picture. The cap space, the potential free agents, the internal development, and the philosophy of this front office all point in one direction. And it brings us to the final question. How does San Francisco bridge the gap from what we saw this season to what they're trying to become next year? When you zoom out and look at everything together, it really does feel like the 49ers are standing on their own version of the Golden Gate Bridge right now, staring at the next phase of this offense. On one side, you've got what just happened. A season where the talent was there, the quarterback was there, the play calling was there, but the wide receiver room simply didn't separate well enough to keep everything humming. On the other side, you've got real opportunity. Cap space, young players ready to develop, and a clear understanding of what went wrong. That's a powerful combination. Financially, the 49ers are in a decent spot. They're projected to have around $50 million to work with this offseason, and they can always push money into future years if they feel confident about their core. So yes, from a pure cap standpoint, they could afford a big contract like Justin Jefferson's. The question has never really been whether they can pay someone. The question is whether they should also give up the draft capital it would take to make that happen, and whether Minnesota would even be willing to pull the trigger. That's why I keep coming back to realism. Splashy moves sound great, but sustainable success usually comes from smart ones. And smart, in this case, probably looks like a combination of internal growth and targeted additions. If Ricky Pearsall comes back healthy and regains that early season explosiveness, you already have a potential efficiency-based #1 receiver on the roster. If Jordan Watkins takes a step forward, if Jacob Cowing makes that year 2 leap, if Demarcus Robinson continues to do his job, and then, on top of that, you add one physical, reliable wideout like Romeo Doubs, who can catch in traffic and block in the run game, suddenly this offense starts to look balanced again. And that balance is everything, because when the receivers do their job, the run game opens up. When the run game opens up, play action becomes lethal. When play action works, Brock Purdy gets clean looks downfield. And when Brock gets clean looks, this offense becomes one of the most dangerous units in football. We've already seen it. This team doesn't need to tight windows every single drive. So let me leave you with this. If you were running the 49ers, what would your plan be at wide receiver? Would you go big with a trade? Would you target free agency? Or would you trust Ricky Pearsall and the young guys while adding one smart veteran piece? Drop your answer in the comments, because I want to hear how you'd build this thing. And if you've enjoyed this breakdown, do me a favor and hit that like button. It really helps push the video out. Make sure you're subscribed as well, because we're working toward that 1,000 subscriber goal. And staying connected all off-season means you won't miss any updates, moves, or analysis as this roster comes together. The foundation is already here. The quarterback is here. The play caller is here. The weapons are almost there. Now it's just about crossing that bridge and putting the final pieces in place. Let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next one. Reinvent itself. It just needs to fix the weakest link. What hurt San Francisco this year wasn't a lack of stars. It was a lack of separation, a lack of consistency, and a drop-off in wide receiver blocking after Brandon Ayuk went down. Fix those three things, even modestly, and you're talking about a completely different season. Explosive plays come back. Third downs get easier. Christian McCaffrey finds more daylight. George Kittle gets better matchups. And Brock Purdy doesn't have to live in